Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? What we're going to talk about today is food waste. Who's guilty? Yeah. You know, as I sit here and I'm drinking my smoothie, you kind of have to wonder what the hell is wrong with us. I don't want you to feel like you're alone, okay? Because don't worry, you're far from alone, and once upon a time, I was right there with you. I'm actually going to confess that I used to waste a lot of food. So, that's really hard to say. I used to actually waste a lot of food. Sad. Here's some statistics for you. In the United States, food waste is estimated at between 30 to 40% of the food supply. That's upwards of 1/3 of all the food in the United States. Do you know how many people we can feed with that food that we waste? Just think about that for just a moment. Wasted. All that food. It shocked me that it was that high until I think of how unaware I was at the amount of food I was just letting go right in the garbage. And I wised the hell up. When I was a young wife and a mom, I worked hard to learn to be a good wife and a good mom because I got to stay at home. I made, the meals of the day for my family. However, even though I had a food budget, I found myself calling my husband, on his way home from work. Hey, you want to stop at McDonald's, because Andrew, he was like 4 years old. You know what I mean? That type of thing. Pick up a Happy Meal for him. And it wasn't because I needed a larger budget for groceries. No. Then when I went to, because we used to be, all right, I'll tell you a little bit about me. I used to be in that mommy and me because it was me, it was me and my son. We loved that stuff, and it was like exercise for him because he was in baby gymnastics. Oh, shut up. All right. But listen, I found that several families with double the amount of kids actually had grocery bills that are less than mine. How could this actually be? I, for the life of me, could not figure it out. I was confused. And I didn't know where I was going wrong. I was raised in a variety of settings because my mom was divorced, okay? And she was remarried. And in fact, we always seemed to be learning to live somewhere new. Like, as a result, I was never taught to actually how to I was taught how to run a home, but not really, because when my mom got divorced, I was, she was working because she was a cop. So I, was spending a lot of time with my grandparents. And then when she got remarried to my dad, then it was but my dad was a fire chief. I was never really there because I was always with my grandparents and I was spending a lot of time on the farm. And then I was over at my Aunt Marie's, so I was constantly back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You know what I mean? And then I would spend time at my dad's house on the weekend. And he had a girlfriend, so it was kind of like I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing or what I was supposed to be learning, So it took time to admit to myself that I was actually a food waster. And I realized that I was making critical mistakes with our own food, starting with just a few things. What I was actually feeding my family, what to buy at the grocery store, how to cook at home, and very importantly, how to put away my food. But keep in mind, when I started to realize all this, I was a very young mom. I became a mom. Andrew was born, I was 22 years old. So, you know, I was new to all of this. And like I said, I never really learned how to do any of this. So here's some food wasting mistakes. Using very expensive ingredients. You've watched those cooking shows, right? And they use these, you know, ingredients, and you're like, where can I find that? I've never even seen that ingredient before, you know, that type of thing. I'm a cookbook hound. I love cookbooks. I collect cookbooks, right? I love looking at yummy recipes, whether it's on the TV or in a cookbook, in those glossy books, and you try to recreate them, and then when you make them, you're like, it doesn't look like the picture, you know? But I was wasting money in doing so. And you see, most of those recipes call for ingredients that are way outside my budget. And instead of using money more wisely and stretching it over a full month, I was buying high-priced items that cut days off of how far our food should have stretched and how far my budget would go. So a better strategy is to find like really old cookbooks, right, that use common, inexpensive, staple ingredients. I now collect cookbooks that are from like World War II, you know, Great Depression, things like that. I love crockpot cookbooks, you know, things like that, you know, like dump, like the crockpot, like the cookbooks where you can dump and go kind of cookbooks, you know. Here's the next thing. Buying only name brand items. Cut it off right there. I don't buy name brand items. This was a huge hangover from my upbringing when we could not afford name brand. Deep inside, I saw being able to buy name brand as showing the world, or showing myself, I should say, that we had stepped up in the world, you know. And again, I was wasting our food money. And, you know, that right there, like even still to this day, I refuse to buy anything name brand. I refuse. I buy no frills, you know, store brand name, you know, that type of thing. I don't care. The next thing is cooking low quality food. I had these lovely highlights of dinners, and I mean, I would go like all out. I was like, you know, the coup de grace. I was bougie. I was this, I was that. I was wasting so much money. They were great, but in order to get those highlights, I skimped in other areas. And that meant like Monday through Thursday meals were just scraped together, hamburger helper type meals. Even though I cooked from scratch, the food wasn't healthy and it was not good. And it made it that much easier to call for takeout when faced with day 2 of not so good food. You know what I mean? So there's a reason why they tell us to fill our plates with foods from all different like colors, like all different backgrounds, like, you know what I mean? Like, I love Indian food, I love Chinese food, I love this kind of food, I love all different kinds of food. Even though I'm Italian, I love all kinds of food from all different kinds of backgrounds. The next thing is cooking too much food for our size family. I am guilty of this, and I blame my heritage because I'm Italian. I could literally cook for an army and not think twice. At the time, I had no extra freezer. Keep in mind, I'm a young mom, and all we have is the fridge and the freezer that's attached to the fridge, right? So it was just 2 adults, 1 toddler, just nibbling, you know. Tend to cook for a much larger crowd. That meant we tended to overeat. It's not healthy, of course. Also, there was a lot of food left over, and that food would generally go into the fridge. A meal of leftovers might come from it. However, in general, just shove them into the back of the fridge. It got forgotten, and then it got thrown out. So I need to incorporate meal planning into my routine, which I now do. The next thing is chaos is not a good form of organization at all. As you can tell from food lost in the fridge, my kitchen was a state of chaos constantly. There was no organization. I had no idea if cans were old, if spices were out of date. You just pawed through the shelf and questioned until you found what you were looking for. Or I gave up and went out and bought it again. Yep. I mean, back to that, wasting food, you know, wasting money. I was guilty. I mean, I was a total mess. The next thing is failing to use food to its greatest extent. I never ever thought to use turkey bones and pieces left over from Thanksgiving to make bone broth. Never. I didn't use the ham bone to flavor a pot of beans. When I finished the meal immediately in front of me, I threw out everything and cleaned up for the night. Done. Now, completely different story. The next thing, storing food properly. Temperatures vary inside your fridge, right? There are some foods that should not be kept on the door. Others do better when kept in the produce bin. Some fruits and veggies emit gas that causes nearby produce to ripen faster. In your pantry, food storage lasts longer if you work to lessen the 6 enemies of food storage, right? So, the next one is the worst food wasting sin I ever committed was sheer laziness. There were times when I woke up the next morning and I found that I had set last night's leftovers aside and I never put them away. I know every single one of us is guilty of that. And you can't deny it. So why should food waste be a big deal to people of the prepared mind? Well, cutting down on food waste is super important for us to make our preparedness efforts effective and sustainable. First, we often invest a considerable amount of time, effort, and financial resources into building our stockpile to sustain ourselves during crises. However, when we waste food, we squander these valuable resources, leaving us and our loved ones vulnerable and our preparations compromised. Second, food waste disrupts the delicate balance of inventory management. How many of us struggle right now to maintain an adequate rotation of our supplies? For many of us, it's our Achilles heel. We meticulously plan and attempt to rotate our food supplies to ensure we have enough for the intended duration. And when we needlessly waste food, it creates a gap in our preparedness plan, potentially leading to shortages or insufficient rations. And finally, food waste undermines the principle of sustainability that that many of us strive for. And when we waste food, we also squander valuable resources like water, energy, and agricultural inputs, counteracting the self-sufficiency and reliance that we so desire. And those are the 3 pretty big reasons to stop wasting food. I mean, wouldn't you think? It's just super important if we want to maximize the effectiveness and the sustainability of our prepping efforts. So, acknowledging that I had these blind spots was the first step in correcting them. There is no shame in not knowing how to cook, maintain a home, raise a family, or a homestead. No shame. Many of us have holes in our skill base. I know I still do. Consider how to run your kitchen, your food budget, and food storage as another skill to work on. Find a mentor if you have to. Search out a great blog or a book. You can change from a food waster to a thrifty foodie mom. You know, you really can, or a dad. So, what ways do you waste food? And how could you change your food wasting ways? Let's talk about it, okay? All right, guys, I'm out of here. I will see you in the next one, okay? You stay safe, you stay positive, you keep prepping, and as always, fearless. Ciao.